attacks overnight. At least 3 lives lost in southern city of Odessa and another 3 killed in the eastern Donetsk region. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian military is claiming further territorial gains in Zaporizhia. And that's where we find our Fred Pleitgen. Fred, I believe you've been spending time with some of the troops on the front line. How are they doing and how's morale?
Hi there, Julia. Well, it certainly is going for the Ukrainians. They are saying that they are making territorial gains on some places in the front line, specifically the area where we were, where they say that they managed to take back a couple of villages there. But they also say that the going is extremely tough. They're able to move forward, but the Russians are putting up massive and very stiff resistance using artillery and using combat jets as well. Here's what we witnessed.
Ukrainian forces firing at Russian troops holed up in Blagodatnya in South Ukraine. This video, the brigade says, shows the Russians making a final stand here. Much of the area near the front lines deeply scarred by combat.
This is the area of Ukraine where the heaviest fighting is currently taking place, and you can see what it's done to a lot of the buildings in the cities and villages around this area, and that fighting is set to get even worse.
We're with the 68th Jaeger Brigade, which has been making important gains here. The soldiers confident and grateful for U.S. supply gear. A lot of the times it saved my life, he says. It saves our lives every day from shrapnel, shelling, and bullets. But some of the vehicles have already been lost, and the Russians continue to fire back. Constant artillery shelling and even airstrikes too close for comfort as our crew had to duck for cover. Still, the deputy brigade commander says his soldiers are just getting started. Our counterattack will definitely be successful, he says. We believe in victory. We are moving forward towards our goal. We are advancing. On this part of the front line, the Ukrainians believe they have the gear, the manpower, and the determination to advance far into Russian-held territory.
So as you can see, Julia, some pretty tough battles that are going on there on that southern front in southeastern Ukraine. And of course, we were only on one small part of that front. It really is several hundred miles long. And there are areas, of course, where the going is even tougher for the Ukrainians. Where late last week, the Russians claimed to have shot down a lot of Western supplied armor. They're also putting out some videos. So the going is definitely tough for the Ukrainians, but what really stood out to us, Julia, was the fact that morale was very high among those Ukrainian soldiers, especially after they've been able to make those initial gains. And those gains are very important. They go pretty deep into the territory that has been held by the Russians. But I think that the Ukrainians also very much understand that the going is only going to get tougher from here on. The Russians have very strong layered defenses in the hinterland. Those go on for a very large or for a very long distance. And the Ukrainians know that the Russians have some pretty tough soldiers down there on the ground as well. So nobody expecting that this offensive is going to be quick, that it's going to be short, or that it's going to be easy. In fact, the Ukrainians say they understand, if anything, things are going to be long and things are going to get even tougher than they already are, Julia.
Yeah, they're prepared. Fred, good to have you. Thank you. Fred Pleitgen there.
Partial success. Those are the words Ukraine is using today to describe intense ground fighting in the opening phase of its summer counteroffensive. Advances are reported in Bakhmut and Zaporizhia. By all accounts, fighting has been intense. And these battles are happening amid increasing air attacks by Russia. Ukraine says missile strikes killed 3 people in Odessa and 3 others in the Donetsk region. I want to bring in our senior international correspondent, Sam Kali, who joins us now live from Kiev. Good to have you with us, Sam. So let's start with this summer counteroffensive, certainly underway. Talk to us about where the efforts are focused right now.
Well, I think the main and new effort, if you like, is on that front line in Zaporizhia, basically about halfway between Zaporizhia city and Donetsk city, the latter, of course, held by Russian-backed separatists since 2014-15. So in that context, this is a very important front line indeed from the Russian perspective, because it is the defensive line against possible Ukrainian advances towards relief of the Crimean Peninsula. It also captured by Russia back in 2014. But the Ukrainians initially began with their assaults there in a rather low-level series of reconnaissance raids, reconnaissance by force, as it's known in the military trade. Now it's stepped up its actions in a significant way. It's still not a kind of blitzkrieg. It's not the massive assault that many people were anticipating. They're still making very small incremental gains here and there. They are taking significant casualties. The scale of those casualties, of course, remain a military secret. But we have seen evidence that they've lost some of the NATO equipment, inevitably, that they were given to use in this counteroffensive. But Linda, at the same time, they are enjoying success and gaining momentum in a salient of territory south of the city of Bakhmut. Now, that puts the Russian troops that have been battling there for more than a year in a very, very brutal and ongoing struggle on the back foot. That is an important development because of the way it will split the pressure on the Russians, making it difficult for the Russian commanders to decide quite where to invest their troops. But they do still have the advantage, the Russians, in terms of troop numbers, in terms of the fact that they can dominate the skies above all. And it's for that reason that the Ukrainians are continuing to make international pleas for the help with particularly F-16 aircraft. There are a number of countries that are currently have agreed to or have even begun training of pilots on fourth-generation fighter jets, but they've yet to be seen, any of those jets given, much less deployed here in Ukraine, Linda.
And Sam, speaking about additional military aid, the US has indicated that more aid is coming in the form of additional armored vehicles. And this, of course, comes as the head of Russia's private military company has indicated that his forces will return to the front lines in August. What more can you tell us?
Well, Yevgeny Prigozhin, the mercurial leader of the Wagner mercenary group, has indeed, as you rightly say, said that his troops will be returning to the front line in August. They were fighting in Bakhmut. Indeed, it was their rotation out and the rotation of other regular army groups in that coincided with this Ukrainian push and advances. But crucially, he has said that he will not allow his troops, as others have agreed to do in other militias and other private military companies, to sign contracts with Russia's Ministry of Defense, an organization that he has very loud and very public contempt for. How that resolves itself, I think we'll see play out over the next few weeks. But he has said he would return to the fray, so that, I suppose, from the Russian perspective, might be a good thing.